One of my subscribers asked me to create a tutorial a few months back on how to render out foliage, and I thought it would be a good opportunity to go through a few of Arnold's little quirks and also show you how Arnold lights work. So this video that we're going to look at today, which is rendering foliage, is basically going to be covering several subjects and will be in a couple of parts. So if you're interested in the foliage bit of it, it's going to be the second part. The first part is just going to cover lights and how I go about lighting a studio scene such as the one in front of us. If I just press play here, you can actually see how the final lighting came out. And after this fine introduction, let's just jump into it and get started. Okay, so bear in mind that Arnold comes with its own lights. If you go to the Arnold shelf or to the Arnold menu, you go to lights and you can find all the specialized lights that Arnold comes with. So you got like a spherical, you got uh, physical sky, which basically will mimic daytime and daylight. And then there's a light portal, which kind of, I'm not sure exactly how to describe that one. You got a photometric light, which takes data and basically translate um, this special data called IES to like how does a light bulb actually emit light going through glass, and will give you like patterns on a surface. And a mesh light will basically take any mesh and make it into a light. And sky dome, which you should all be aware of, and of course the basic area light. Now, since Arnold is being integrated into Maya, let me just lock the background because and add that in. There we go. A couple of things have become a lot easier to do with this light setup. If we go up here to Maya's lights, disregard the RenderMan stuff here, but we can use this as default Maya lights to basically light anything. Now, I usually use two lights from here. It will be all the area light or the Maya spotlight. I rarely use anything else. Well, that's not true. I use the directional light and the Maya spotlight the most, and then the area light. Now, because I have an area light in the Arnold setup, I don't really need this one. But these two lights are very, very useful, especially the spotlight, because the spotlight gives you quite a lot more control than any other light that you will have. So let's just take a look at what regular spotlight in Maya does, and then the additions that we get when we use Arnold. So I'm going to create a light. It's going to be very small here in my scene now. I'm just going to scale it up a bit, and I'm going to bring it closer to the wall. I'm going to press 7. And this is basically what you should see. Now, if you know anything about Maya lights, then you know just a little bit on how it works. Firstly, we have the intensity. And the intensity is basically the strength of the light coming out of the light bulb. So currently it's 1 and we can just push it up. Now, the decay rate by default is set to no decay, so it doesn't lose any energy. Now, if you were just using Maya lights with just a regular render, what you would end up doing is putting quadratic here, and then this will behave more like a real light, and then you would have to up this number just so the light can get further. You're just kind of giving it more energy. Anyway, moving down, then we have the cone angle, which is basically how big of an opening the light has, and then penumbra, how soft that the focus basically of that light is, and then the drop off, how much, if there's something sitting in front of the lens that's basically choking it like an iris. But then we also have some of the Arnold stuff in here, and the Arnold stuff is what's really cool. So I'm actually going to turn on viewport rendering for that. So I'm just going to turned it off, and now I don't see the control anymore. Just hold on. All right, a little bug, and if this ever happens to you, what you should do is just go to a different viewport and then go back to Arnold and you'll get the little viewport thing. By the way, I'm in my 2018, which they added this feature. So I'm just now going to switch into the render here, and you'll see that immediately the light goes away. Now, why does that happen? Well, the minute I go into Arnold, I basically have disregarded anything here. I still have, other than the light intensity and the cone, penumbra, and drop off, all of this stuff, the light that's coming out is now turned off. I basically have now a decay rate. And the only way that I can push up the decay is by opening up the exposure. So I'm going to make the exposure 15, and you can see already I'm getting a light. So let's make that 20, and now I have a pretty strong light. This is very powerful. Secondly, we could also turn on use color temperature. So by default, the default for white is 6500, but if we, let's say, knock it down to, let's say, 4000, it will start going to the reds. And if we go up to like 70,000, I think there, it should go blue. Let's make it a round number. I'm actually going to turn on like just an area to render, otherwise it's going to take forever. There we go. So let's make this like 110. There we go. You'll see it now turn blue. So this is kind of the option that you got, which is a more realistic option for the light. I'm going to go down here to samples. So samples is basically how many rays it sends. So it sends out a certain amount of rays. I'm just doubling it. Radius, we can make the radius larger and bigger. I'm not sure how this works, so I'm still reading up on that. But it helps. So I usually just up these numbers depending on how good the quality of the render I'm looking for. No, just know that this is an IPR, so the actual final render is not exactly the same. Normalize. Basically, I'm going to skip a lot of this stuff. There's shadow density. You can make if the shadows are really dark and you want to make him less dark, and you just dial this down here. And then it's more about the lenses that sit in front of the light, so you get aspect ratio and so on. So you can change the lens, and this will create bokeh effects and stuff like that. It's pretty cool. All right, then you got visibility. You can basically say how many times the light bounces. Instead of doing this through the render settings, you could do it per light. So basically, you would say, oh, this light actually add more diffuse, add more specular, add more bounces to whatever you're doing. All right, now we get to the really cool stuff, and this is the things that really make lighting powerful, is the light filters. Now, every decent render engine has this. In RenderMan, it's pretty powerful. What they've got, it's a little easier to use in theirs, but this one is pretty good too. So I'm just going to press add, and the first one is a gobo. And a gobo is basically a filter that you put in front of your lens. So if I press that, it creates the gobo. I'm going to go in here and I could choose a color and basically do that and just put a color in front. So it's, and then I could decide how much density it has, offset, all kind of other options in here, including putting a we really got different options here. I haven't really played a lot with it. So you could have subtract, mix, and so on. It's pretty cool. Anyway, so what I was getting at is that this is a very powerful tool, which is, it's not changing the actual color of the light, but it's like putting a filter in front of the light, which gives you a little more flexibility in how it behaves. I'm going to choose the light, and I'm going to discard that. I'm going to add another filter. And we're going to look at barn doors. Now, barn doors is basically those flaps that you see around um, different uh, different lights, mainly spotlights. And it's pretty cool because what it will let you do is top and right is cut off the light in certain angles. So let's say the different edges. So that will be the right top and the right left. So I think top right, top left. So let's say I do 0.2 and 0.2. I should get like just the top cut off. So you can do that, and then you can soften out the edges a bit so you get a little bit of light there. So then we go left, and you can go 0.2 and 0.2 and 0. I'm not sure why they did this, but it's probably just to give you the option to kind of rotate it. We also have like bottom left and bottom right. And let's do the same here on left and bottom right. And then you can just filter out the edges a bit. And basically we'll give you this option. Now it takes a little time to get used to how this works, but it's pretty powerful because when you can actually crop some of the light without actually putting an object there, it makes it a lot easier for us to um, work on the image. I'm just going to make this a little bigger. There. All right, let's go back, and I'm 10 minutes in, so I'm going to probably cut this short in about a minute. But let's discard, show one more, and I think we'll end it soon. And then we got light blockers. Light blockers are pretty cool because what it does, for that I'm going to actually have to stop the render and turn on the lights, is it creates an object that I'm going to scale up and move here. So when I render, that should block out the light, anything that's inside of this. So I'm going to up the density, and you'll see, it should at least, there you go. It should block out the light around that object. Now I use this quite a bit, especially if I got like an object and I want to block out the light around it. And it really makes it easy to create like areas where the light is not affecting. And that's about it. Anyway, I'm going to stop here, and when we return, we are going to look at a set and how to start lighting it now that we have these tools. And I'll talk a little bit more about the different lights. Alright, let's proceed with the lighting portion of this tutorial. So here I have my set, and basically you can see I got some leaves and objects here, and I want to start lighting this. Now let's say I'm not an experienced lighter, and I'm just getting started. Uh, it will be a lot easier for me to light this if I actually, instead of having something as complex as leaves and stuff like that, are just simple shapes that I can use to light. Because if you know how to light a cube and you know how to light a cylinder, life becomes great. And then I could also rearrange my camera. So let's start off with the camera. The camera is fairly important because creating a nice composition is important. So I can, let's say, just realign this so it's a little more interesting, get a nicer curve going. You could always use some tools that Maya has, like maybe something like this, so we fill out this side of the frame, but then it's too much, so I'm going to just align that maybe here, or let's say it's all a matter of playing around with this just until we get something that looks interesting. I'm looking to see if I can get my eye. I sorted onto that little ladybug. Maybe something like this, and then I'll move the ladybug to a more interesting position. But I think like this, and let's say I can play around with the lenses and so on. I just got my lens set at 20. Let's make that at 22. Just a little closer. There we go. Yeah, so now I have a lens. I have my camera set. I'm pretty happy with this, but it's a little harder to establish lighting to something like this if you're inexperienced. So a good way to approach this is just to create just simple geometries. Now in this situation, I basically have just a cylinder here, and I'm just going to align it to the pot because that's going to give me a better idea. So I'm just aligning it to the pot, and this is basically it. This is going to be where the rocks are, and this is the pot, and all I need to do is to start lighting this. All right, cool. So the next thing I'm going to do is just set up a two-panel area so I could see what I'm doing. Now I like to clean up my work area for this. So I'm just going to create this. I'm going to hold down my space bar, and in the right hand side of the screen I'm just going to click and remove the timeline, remove the time slider. I'm going to leave the command line and this just so you help the tool help thingy here, just so you guys can see what I'm doing. Sometimes I tend to remove the tabs on top here just so I get a little more screen space. And then I'm going to go to panels, and let's go to layout and two side by side. And then this one's going to be perspective, and this one's going to be my render view or my lighting. What I tend to do is click on the Arnold render view, and I'm going to just click that little icon up there, and I'm going to dock it, or at least try to dock it on this view here, if it will let me. Come on. Alright, so let's make this back to a single panel and try dock it to here, and maybe that will help. There you go. I'm going to stop the render, otherwise it's going to take forever. Alright, cool. So now I have this set up. I'm just going to press 1 to 1. We could actually make this bigger. There we go. Alright, so I have my setup. I'm ready to go. All I need to do is start putting in lights. So I'm going to stop the lesson here, and when we come back, we'll look at how to add lights and how to use light blockers and barnyard doors just to sort of create an interesting look. Alright, so let's proceed with some more lighting, and now let's actually start lighting our scene. So when I start lighting a scene, especially a scene like this where I have a cube and a cylinder, a good way to start is getting a good spotlight, because this is it's an interior lighting situation. Getting a good spotlight, and I'm going to put it somewhere between, let's say, 45 degrees and 15 degrees either side of these objects, and it really depends how it looks. It also depends where the shadows fall. So that's what I'm going to do. So let's go to create lights and a spotlight, and I'm just going to pull out the spotlight. Let's start rendering, and currently nothing's really happening. You can see that my Maya is slowing down, and that's due to some render settings. So let's just fix that quickly. The Arnold render settings, I'm just going to knock this down to 1 in the diffuse and then 0 in the specular and all of this. Um, the reason I'm doing that is just so we can get a fast render and things aren't, slowing down. All right, so I'm going to lift that up. I'm going to scale up because we don't really care for the size of a spotlight. It doesn't matter. It will still light things the same. It's not like an area light where it's actually the surface matters. All right, so I'm just going to go up here, and I'm going to go down here to the exposure, and let's make that 15. And immediately we get something that looks pretty nifty. It's just a little harsh, and we need a little love here. So we're going to make this slightly wider and give some drop off. And let's choke it. Not a lot, but just let's say 0.5. Just so it's a little choked. All right. And like I said, if I look from above, currently it's about 15 degrees and it's pointing straight. Camera is just off by 45 degrees, so if this is like straight on, it's just slightly off. And again, the reason we want it like sort of this distance from the camera, notice that because I'm looking straight onto this edge here, I'm getting a three-dimensional shape. And that's due to the way that the light is falling. It's highlighting one side more than others, and then the light has the option to wrap around the object and give us that feel of a three-dimensional shape. I'm going to press T on my keyboard and just pull the light back a bit and use this new manipulator that we got to kind of aim better the light. I'm going to just hold down the V key so it snaps. I'm just going to snap to a corner. So now if I change the angle of the light and just lift it up, so it's slightly behind the camera and lift it up. I'm not worried too much about the background there. I'm going to kind of choke out the light over there eventually. What I'm aiming for is to kind of fill in the light here, give a nice highlight. The shadows are a bit harsh and in the back, so I'm going to take the light closer and over, just like higher up a bit. Actually, I kind of like the highlight I'm getting here and getting a nice area there, but still it could go just slightly higher up and probably closer. Probably closer. Let's take that slightly closer. Yeah. All right. So this is pretty nice. It's not perfect in any way. I probably want to choke some of the light here and some of the light at the top. And to do that, we'll actually use the light blocker for that, or the barnyard doors, but the light blocker is probably our go-to. So before that, I also want to make this, because it's a light and a light bulb, I kind of want to make it warmer, so I'm going to go down in the numbers. So I'm just going to change that to 5, and you see it's going to become a little warmer, the light. Um, of course, we can go up the numbers just to make it more white, but I kind of like the warm color because I'm going to contrast that with the background. All right, so let's add a light blocker. So I'm going to just scroll down, get to my filters. I can actually turn off that visibility, and let's add a light blocker. And we'll create that at origin, and I'm just going to make that 100% blocked. And then I actually want this to be a panel. It's just easier to demonstrate a lot of the stuff with it. So I'm going to grab the light blocker, go to modify, match transform. So this is now going to sit right on the light. So transform and focus, and you can actually see it right on the light. So I'm going to just take that forward, and you can see now that I'm blocking out the light completely. So now that it's here, I can actually use this kind of similar to a barnyard door. But I'm going to take it to the side, and let's scale that up like that. So we're just getting like this whole section here. Then I'm going to just feather that out a bit, like so, and we're going to dial down the opacity of it a bit. And all I need to do is just mosey in on over here and darken it so it looks like I've chopped off a little bit of the light so it's getting a nicer feel to it. All right, I could do the same by creating another one. So let's create another one. Let's go add light blocker. And I'll do the same trick. I'll just go here and here. Actually, you can go here and here. I could light blocker 2 to light blocker 1. Match transforms all. And let's make that a plane as well. Plane. Alright, and then I can move it over to the other side. Of course, we want to make that. And this is very good when you actually want to kind of, let's say I didn't want I want to cut out of the light, I want to cut out the pot. So I could actually do that. A pretty nifty little trick. Smooth out that little bit of light just a bit. So we're getting this nice beam of light just on the edge, like so. And yeah, so now I can grab these two and I'll just parent them underneath the light so they always will travel with that light if I ever want to move it. For example, let's say I want to move it like that more. Let's get that a much nicer cone of light coming in. All right, I'm going to stop here, and when we come back, we'll do the backlight and the fill light, and we'll bring in our actual geometry just to get a better idea of what's being lit and what's not. And then we'll be done with the lighting segment, and when we come back, we'll go into the texturing segment, which we'll jump right into it and work on the leaves that are on the floor, and then I'll do the top leaves, and basically I'll be done with the portion of the tutorial that you guys are probably interested in, but we'll continue in onward after that just to get the rest of the stuff textured. So that being said, let's jump into the next section, which is giving our secondary light. Alright, so let's add our secondary light. I'm actually going to use a area light for this. I just created an area light. I'm going to pull it out, and I'm actually going to scale it up. Not so much. And lift it up. I am going to change its shape to a disc, just because that's the way I want to light it. I might change my mind, but this is a test, so that's what we're going to do. And I'm going to make this 15 as well, just so we're getting the same kind of light. And notice that now I've lit this up. I'm getting a much softer light, and that's kind of what I'm aiming for. So here too, I'm going to press T. I should have gotten that same controller, but because I don't, I'm going to have to set this up differently. I'm going to stop my render, and this is a little trick. If you hold down Shift and spacebar, you should be able to collapse all of the extra windows. And I'm just going to go back here to my channel box, and we're going to zero that out. And I'm going to go here to create locator, and we're just going to create a small little rig. So I'm going to grab that locator and pull it out a bit, grab my light, and go to constraint, and go into the aim constraint options, and make sure that maintain offset is turned on and apply. And we can close this. Now, why did I do this? Because now this is always going to look at that specific spot, and I'm pretty set. So I'm just going to make sure that this thing is aiming to that corner there. Alright, cool. So now, because I know more or less where I want to put this, I want this to kind of bounce back. Alright, so I'm going to do this again. Repurpose it. And notice that now I'm getting a much nicer lighting situation. I'm getting this nice cool light coming in here. that I've cropped off, and it's giving me that nice light. And then this is softening all the rest of the light. I'm actually going to knock it down to about, let's say, 12, so it's not as strong, but it's now filling in the light. And this is a good place to make this a cool light, so I'm going to turn on use temperature, and let's make this 750. So it's a kind of a little bit of a bluish tint to it. So we're going to get that. Let's make that 13, the light. I'm kind of liking that. And probably let's push it a little closer and lower down like that. I'm not too happy. I'm going to try some stuff. Just swizzle around till I get a nice highlight. So maybe I'll just bring it from behind like so, and see that nice little highlight I'm getting there? That's pretty cool. And then I'm kind of breaking up the dark edges on the table. Alright, let's say I'm happy with this. We'll probably still change the lights a lot more, just tweak them here and there, but this is more or less what we're aiming for. And I'm getting nice shadows. I probably can go back here and to the shadow density and just knock it down a bit. And while the samples are low, I'm going to make this double so that should soften up the shadows. I think, yeah, what the radius will do is soften up the shadows a lot more. So if I make this like 0.2, you'll see like all the shadows coming from this specific light are now softened on the edges. So you have to up the samples, and then you'll get a nice option there. Alright, so that's looking good. Alright, last light, and then I promise we'll end we'll end this lighting session. What should I use? Let's use another spotlight. So I'm gonna go create lights spotlight, and in this case I'm just gonna push it forward, and let's up this to like 20, so we get a nice strong light coming out of there. Oh, sorry, that's radius. My bad. Let's go back here. 20 there. Alright, so that's what I got. I'm gonna keep that like that, soften it, choke it just a, let's not choke it just yet. Alright, let's make this blue, so I want this. There we go. Alright, so the cool thing is that what I'm aiming for is just to create like a backlight, and this backlight is basically just to light the background. So what I'm going to do is just put the light low down just underneath the table like so, and take this thing I'm creating quite a hot spot there, but I think if I do it this way, let's try the opposite way. Yeah, I think that's probably going to work. Yeah, I think this one works the best. I'm getting like a hot spot there, and it's kind of giving that nice luma there. I could put some light blockers in there just to make it more interesting, but for now, I think it's enough. I'm going to stop here, and when we come back, we'll jump in to make our leaves look like leaves. So, with that being said, I'm going to stop, and we have ended the lighting portion of this tutorial. If you are now interested in how to shade some leaves, let's jump into that and see how it works.